For today's meandering, I'm going to walk through a little bit of history. And that history is of HP Lovecraft and his visit to Staten Island. He often crossed through Staten Island to go to New Jersey, but he did stop by this location. And many years ago, my wife and I wrote a blog called Comfy Chair. It's now defunct, and I wrote several articles, following in the footsteps of HP Lovecraft in the historical areas that he visited. Where I'm at is Conference House Park. It's on the southern shore of Staten Island. And through his letters, we learned that he took a train to Tottenville, and you'll see some of that footage attached to this video of the train station now, and then when he visited. Conference House Park, the conference house itself, is on land that was granted to Charles Billopp. And he was significant in the 1670s, and he was granted this land, 1,300 acres, in 1677, I believe, was when the conference house was built. And the land was granted to him in 1675. It's actually on the land which is behind me down a bit. This was all Native American burial ground. There's a significant portion of it that is called Burial Ridge, where excavations took place. One excavation done by a local archaeologist, anthropologist, Melanson Skinner. And Lovecraft had to have known of his work. If you look at the book that was published a few years ago called Lovecraft's Library, and Lovecraft also had these two guidebooks, hardcover guidebooks, which I also have a copy of, not his own, but original editions of those guidebooks for New York. And he traveled to Staten Island, got off the train, which was 5 minutes from where my wife and I used to live, and walked up, which we believe is Satherley, which is right over this way, to Conference House Park, and visited the actual house that is still here. And I'll read you a portion from his letters. But I have to say that, like my wife and I, we write weird fiction, and we play in the sandbox of his mythos, Cthulhu and the Elder Gods and Nego and all of that craziness. But we don't condone his virulent racism and xenophobia, which is well known. So it also should be noted that the HP Lovecraft Historical Society, who I bought this jacket from, it's a jacket that says Miskatonic University on the back, which is the imaginary college that Lovecraft was based on Brown University in Rhode Island. And they don't condone his views either. You can check out their podcast, Voluminous, which goes through his letters. They also put out a product, this here, which is HP Lovecraft and his Environs, which talks about his travels and has a map, and I'll drop on pictures of that. But they have a text about Lovecraft inside, and I'll drop a picture in that of as well in this video. And it indicates all the places he traveled in Providence and in New York. And what is significant is that Staten Island is missing. Now, Staten Island is not known for any significant stories that he wrote, but there is a note, something he says about the conference house, in which he points out its vast and hoary gables, and I'll read that portion when we get over to the building. And he also wrote this in September of 1924. He was a prolific writer of letters to his friends and his family back in Rhode Island. And these letters are to his Aunt Lillian. And what's notable for me, at least, is that not only did he walk past where we used to live to the conference house, an area 5 minutes from us that we used to come and hang out and walk around and, you know, get some nature vibes in us, is that a letter in November of 1924 he wrote about the shunned house, one of his stories, which he cites the Babbitt House in Providence being the inspiration for. But it is interesting to note what I'm going to share with you. What he says of the conference house could be an early just a few months. He was in the middle of writing the shunned house, because I believe he completed it at the end of November 1924, as he notes through his Aunt Lillian, is that his description of the conference house is similar and parallel to what was said of the shunned house. So could it be something that was of an inspiration for him? Because he does say a story can be written of it. And when we get closer, I'm going to read that portion to you. Here we are. Here's the conference house behind me, the Old Billopp House. And I'm going to read you a bit about what Lovecraft said about his visit. Sunday, I made up for this undue domesticity by taking an all-day jaunt to Elder Regions. Whoopee, the past for me. That line is of interest to me. Elder Regions, all-day jaunt. What did he mean by Elder Regions? Obviously, he read the work of Lansing Skinner that he had in his library that talked about the history of Staten Island and the archaeological digs that they did here. I embarked on a Staten Island ferry and was soon in a land of quaint villages that might have been 500 miles from any metropolis. St. George is a sort of Attleboro. Stapleton suggests East Greenwich, and there I took a wheezy accommodation train for Tottenville, on the far tip of the island, which when reached savored of Pasquag. A short walk out of Tottenville, embowered among antique pines on the south shore, and now in a vast state of vast decrepitude, is the Old Billopp House, a stone pile built by the first British circumnavigator of the island about 1664. Now, I'm going to double check the history of this, but like I said before, this land was bestowed upon Billopp, 1,300 acres, by King Charles II, correct? But he continues, there is something both impressive and terrible in its steep and hoary gable, which you see there. One could write a story about it. While married to Sonia Green, Lovecraft lived at 259 Parkside Avenue in Brooklyn, New York, where he wrote and finished The Shunned House in October of 1924. The Babbitt House, located at 135 Benefit Street in Providence, Rhode Island, is otherwise known as the potentially cursed Stephen Harris House. Quote, now the irony is this, in this walk, so many times repeated, the world's greatest master of the terrible and bizarre was obliged to pass a particular house on the eastern side of the street, a dingy, antiquated structure. And this house was in a state of disrepair. It was in a vast decrepitude state. It was a rat poison factory, and it was crumbling down. And he spoke to the man here, and he says that he feels the man didn't appreciate where he was at, even though there was a lot of visitors to this historical site. I'm not going to share what he said of the man. Lovecraft has his own opinions of people, which we don't agree with. But for the historical factor of this setting, and that his visit was here, and that he later wrote of the shunned house. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to walk up to the house and show you some of the historical signs and walk around it so you can see it. And maybe make a trip down here just for its historical value, let alone whether you appreciate Lovecraft walked to this area. And from the train that he spoke of, which is an interesting note, he spoke of Tottenville. We're in the town of Tottenville, and it was named after the Todt family. I think it's T-O-T-H, which, if I'm not mistaken, means of death. And Tottenville being the town of death, because it's sort of applicable. Here on this land, it was built on Native American burial ground. Lansing Skinner did some archaeological work, as I cited before, and some of those relics and artifacts are housed in the visitor center not too far from here, also at the Staten Island Museum of Snug Harbor. And there's a lot of documentation of what is here. There's an area just back over there. It was called Burial Ridge because it's a ridge, and they did some digs over there, and you can still see some of the trenches and holes, the depressions in the ground, which are from that. And if you look at the maps of those digs, you can match up. And it's not the only area. There's a whole bunch of areas there. Here's a good place to start as any. Right here you'll see the entrance to the basement kitchen. And there's a lot of stories associated with the conference house, especially ghost stories. One of a servant girl who was lighting candles and signaling the Americans. She was thrown down stairs that lead to the kitchen and broke her neck and died. And there's stories of her still lighting the candle in the windows here. So just Google conference house ghost stories if you're interested in such a thing. Back there is a garden, and we're going to walk over to the signage I indicated before and show you some of the historical signs. Now, coming up to the front door, you have these signs. The conference house, long known as the Billopp House, built before 1700. In this house, on September 11, 1776, after the Battle of Long Island, a peace conference was held between Lord Howe, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Edward Rutledge. This plaque was installed May 25, 1929. The conference house has been designated a registered National Historic Landmark, 1966. And here is some of the history of it being built. Landmarks of New York, Billopp House. Built by and for Christopher Billopp about 1680. This house was long a center of colonial hospitality. It is known also as Conference House because Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Edward Rutledge met here, Lord Howe, at his request, on September 11th in an unsuccessful effort to halt the American Revolution. Of all days, September 11th. We know what happened on that day in 2001. Okay, so let's just have a walk and I'll show you the extent of the house. There's the second floor. We'll just come around. There's an herb garden over here. It's maintained by the Staten Island Herb Society. There used to be an old well over here on the side. You see that pole there with the arm extended and a chain. I think it's been capped and covered. But it goes up. The hoary gables, as Lovecraft indicated. Garden maintained by the caretakers. From Tottenville, I took the ferry to Perth Amboy, New Jersey, whose colonial skyline loomed beckoning me across the water. And what a town it turned out to be. As the ferry drew near its mooring, I saw that I had encountered something unusual, for the approaching waterfront was a quaint, dingy huddle of 18th century brick and wood buildings, whose lines could not have changed since the days when Dr. Franklin and John Adams used to stop at Packer's Tavern on their coach and horseback journeys. What a skyline! HP Lovecraft, September 1924.